Today, my friend, we're stepping into the complete, unfiltered story of the book of Exodus, all 40 chapters brought to life. No sugarcoating, no skipping the hard parts. Stick with me to the end, and I guarantee something powerful is going to stir in your soul. This is the story that shows what real freedom costs and what real faith looks like, and how one ordinary person can change everything when they say yes to the impossible. Picture that.
The most epic story of deliverance in the entire Bible.
Today, my friend, you're stepping into the complete, unfiltered story of the book of Exodus. All 40 chapters brought to life in a way that hits different. No sugarcoating, no skipping the hard parts. Stick with me all the way to the end, and I guarantee something powerful is going to stir in your soul. This is the kind of story that reminds us what real freedom costs, what real faith looks like, and how one ordinary person can change everything when they say yes to the impossible. Picture the scorching Egyptian sun blazing down on endless golden sands, lighting up massive cities built on the sweat and blood of the Hebrew people. The descendants of Jacob had grown into a mighty nation inside Pharaoh's borders. For years, the Egyptians and the children of Israel lived side by side in uneasy peace. But that calm was about to shatter. Time rolled on, and a new king took the throne. One who didn't remember Joseph or care about the good the Hebrews had done for Egypt. All he saw was a growing threat inside his own borders. He called his advisors into the grand palace hall and laid out his fear. These Israelites were too many, too strong. In a war, they might join Egypt's enemies and escape. Fear spread like wildfire. A plan was born. The Hebrews were forced into brutal slavery, carrying stones, making bricks, building cities like Pithom and Ramses for the Pharaoh. Life turned bitter and crushing. Whips tore into backs. Groans of suffering echoed across the fields. But here's the beautiful, defiant truth. The more they were crushed, the more they multiplied. Hope in Israel refused to die, and that only made Pharaoh angrier. His cruelty knew no limits. When he saw the Hebrew people still growing, he ordered the midwives Shiphrah and Puah to kill every Hebrew baby boy at birth and let the girls live. Those women feared God more than they feared any king. They disobeyed and saved the newborn boys. When Pharaoh demanded answers, they answered with holy courage. The Hebrew women were strong and gave birth before the midwives even arrived. Furious, the king issued an even darker command. Every Egyptian was now to throw Hebrew baby boys into the Nile River. Every Hebrew home became a place of weeping. The river that once meant life now became a tomb for the innocent. Yet right in the middle of that darkness, God was already setting the stage for an epic rescue. The story of Exodus was only just beginning. The hot wind blew through the narrow streets of Goshen, where fear and hope lived side by side in the shadows of Hebrew homes. Mothers hid their newborn sons, protecting them from the merciless decree. But on one ordinary night, in the middle of that oppression, a baby boy came into the world. His cry was soft, yet it carried a destiny that would rewrite history. His mother held him close, feeling the weight of a silent promise. For 3 months, she hid him, muffling every sound, guarding every breath. Time was running out. With tears streaming down her face, she made the heartbreaking choice. She wove a basket of reeds, coated it with tar and pitch so it wouldn't sink, laid her baby inside, and with one last loving look, let the waters of the Nile carry him toward the unknown. The same current that had taken so many lives now carried the chosen one toward a brand new beginning. His older sister Miriam followed the basket through the reeds, staying hidden among the trees along the bank, her eyes never leaving it. Then, something unexpected happened. Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe in the Nile with her servants. When she saw the little basket floating on the water, she ordered it brought to her. She opened it and looked into the innocent eyes of the baby, and her heart filled with compassion. "This is a Hebrew child," she whispered. Before any decision could be made, Miriam stepped out of hiding, heart pounding but voice steady. "Shall I go and call a Hebrew woman to nurse him for you?" The princess looked at the baby, then at the young girl, and nodded with a gentle smile. Miriam ran through the alleys, straight to her mother's house. In minutes, the same woman who had wept while placing her son in the river now held him again in her arms. "Take this child and nurse him for me," the princess commanded. The mother simply nodded, hiding tears of relief. Years passed. The boy grew up inside the palace, surrounded by Egyptian wealth. Pharaoh's daughter named him Moses, because I drew him out of the water. He was taught the ways of the Egyptians' warfare, writing royal traditions, but something deep inside him stayed restless. His blood, his story, his true people could never be erased. One day, while walking through the lands where the Hebrews labored, Moses saw an Egyptian taskmaster brutally beating one of his own brothers. Anger boiled in his veins. He looked around, made sure no one was watching, and in one moment of righteous fury, struck the Egyptian and buried the body in the sand. He thought no one had seen, but the next day when he tried to break up a fight between two Hebrews, one of them looked him straight in the eye and said, "Who made you a judge over us? Are you going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" Fear shot through him. The news had spread. It wouldn't be long before it reached Pharaoh. Moses was now a marked man. With no choice, he fled into the desert until he reached the land of Midian. Exhausted, he sat down by a well. While he rested, he saw some young women coming to water their flocks, daughters of Jethro, the priest of Midian. Before they could finish, a group of shepherds drove them away. Moses stood up that same fire for justice rising again. With courage, he faced the men and helped the young women water their animals. When they got home earlier than usual, their father, Jethro, asked why. They told him about the stranger who had helped them. Curious, Jethro sent for him. Moses was welcomed with warm hospitality. Over time, he found a new home among them. He married Zipporah, one of Jethro's daughters, and became a shepherd. Years rolled by. Egypt felt like a distant memory. Yet something deep in his soul kept calling him something he didn't fully understand yet. Meanwhile, back in Egypt, the groans of the Hebrew people rose to heaven. God heard the cry of his people, and the hour of deliverance was drawing near. The sun beat down on the hills of Midian. The hot desert wind lifted dust while Moses led Jethro's flock through dry valleys and mountains. His feet knew every trail. Years had passed since he fled Egypt. The weight of guilt and running seemed to have dissolved into the simple rhythm of a shepherd's life. But that day, something was about to happen, something that would change his life forever. While leading the sheep beyond the desert, he came to Mount Horeb, the mountain of God. Silence ruled there. The wind blew slowly. The world seemed asleep. Then Moses saw something that made him stop. His eyes widened. In the middle of that dry landscape, a bush was on fire. Flames crackled intensely, yet something was wrong. The bush wasn't burning up. The leaves stayed green. It was impossible. It was supernatural. Moses' heart pounded. His feet hesitated. He narrowed his eyes, trying to understand. Then he whispered to himself, "I'll go over and see this great wonder, why the bush doesn't burn." As he took the first step toward the fire, a voice echoed from the middle of the flames. Not a human voice, but one that made the earth itself seem to tremble. "Moses, Moses." He stopped, blood draining from his face. Hearing his own name come from the fire, made his heart race and his breath catch. Trembling, he answered, "Here I am." The voice continued, strong and full of authority. "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Moses looked at the dry ground beneath his feet. With shaking hands, he untied his sandals and removed them. His whole body was tense. Something inside him knew he was standing before God himself. The voice spoke again, now like thunder rolling through eternity. "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." The weight of that revelation hit Moses like a crashing wave. His heart tightened. Fear gripped his soul. He covered his face with his hands, unable to look at that burning glory. The fire kept burning, but never consumed. Then God spoke words that would echo through history. "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey." Every word resonated in Moses' heart like distant thunder. This was it. God had heard his people's cries. He remembered his covenant. But then the voice from the fire changed. It became a direct call. "So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Moses' heart stopped. His eyes widened. The world around him seemed to spin. "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" His voice came out as a nervous whisper. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't a king. He was just a shepherd, just a fugitive. But God answered without hesitation, "I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." Moses swallowed hard. His thoughts raced. He looked away, trying to process the weight of that mission. But what if I go to the Israelites and say, "The God of your fathers has sent me to you," and they ask me, "What is his name?" Then what shall I tell them? The fire blazed brighter. The answer came like thunder cutting across the centuries. "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you." Moses felt his body tremble. God revealed that this would be his name forever. He would send Moses, but Moses wouldn't go alone. The Lord would perform wonders in Egypt. Pharaoh's heart would be hardened, but in the end, the people would leave with great riches, and the Egyptians would be defeated. Still, Moses hesitated. His heart doubted. He didn't see himself as a deliverer, but the God of the burning bush had already decided. What if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, "The Lord did not appear to you"? Silence hung for a moment. Then the voice of the Most High echoed again. "What is that in your hand?" Moses looked at the simple shepherd's staff he had carried since leaving Egypt, a worn rod shaped by the desert. "A staff," he answered. "Throw it on the ground." Moses hesitated, but obeyed. The staff touched the dry sand, and then something impossible happened. The wood twisted as if it came alive. A hiss cut the air. Moses' eyes widened as the staff became a living snake. Blood drained from his face. Instinctively, he stepped back. "Take it by the tail," the Lord commanded. Moses took a deep breath, sweat running down his forehead. Every instinct screamed not to do it. Any shepherd knew grabbing a snake by the tail invited a strike. But that voice was the voice of God himself. He reached out and grabbed the snake. In the same instant, he felt something pulse through his fingers. The reptile stiffened, and right before his eyes, it turned back into the shepherd's staff. The Lord spoke again. "This is so that they may believe that the God of their fathers, "The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has appeared to you." But God didn't stop there. He told Moses to put his hand inside his cloak. When he pulled it out, his skin was white as snow, covered with leprosy. Terror ran through Moses' veins. "Now put it back into your cloak," God said. Moses obeyed, and when he pulled it out again, the skin was restored completely normal, as if nothing had happened. It was just a glimpse of the power the Lord would display in Egypt. Even with all these signs, Moses still felt the mission crushing his shoulders. "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." The voice of God resounded like thunder over the mountain. "Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say." But Moses lowered his face, feeling a knot tighten in his throat. "Pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else." A sharp silence followed. Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses. Yet he showed mercy. "What about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if he were your mouth and as if you were God to him. But take this staff in your hand so you can perform the signs with it." Moses knew there was no turning back. He said goodbye to Jethro and, with his wife Zipporah and their sons, set out for Egypt. Every step in the desert sand took him back to the place he had left behind so many years ago. The sun was setting when he and his family decided to rest at an inn along the way. The place was simple, but offered shelter for travelers crossing that harsh land. Zipporah settled the children while Moses tried to find some rest. Then something inexplicable happened. A cold chill cut through the dry air. Suddenly, a powerful presence filled the room. Moses felt an invisible force press down on him, as if something was trying to snatch his very breath. His body went rigid. The weight of an invisible hand threw him to the ground. His eyes widened in terror. It was the Lord. But why? The man chosen to free Israel now found himself on the brink of death, unable to move or even understand the reason. His body felt weak, as if something inside him was being ripped away. He struggled to breathe, feeling his life slipping away fast. Zipporah watched everything with wide eyes. Terror gripped her heart when she realized God himself was against her husband. Then something came to her mind, clear as a flash of understanding. Moses was on his way to fulfill God's command, but he had neglected an essential commandment, the circumcision of his son. The Hebrews had received this command since Abraham. Circumcision was the sign of the covenant between God and his people. But Moses, the one who was supposed to lead the children of Israel, had not yet performed this sign on his own son. He could not lead God's people without first being in total obedience. Zipporah didn't hesitate. She took a sharp stone and in one decisive act circumcised her son. With trembling hands, she took the foreskin and touched it to Moses' feet, saying, "Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me." In that same instant, the presence that filled the room withdrew. The oppression lifted, and Moses regained his strength. The Lord had spared him. It was a severe warning. Moses could not lead God's people without first aligning his own house with the Lord's covenant. Still breathing hard, he looked at Zipporah. The desert stretched vast ahead, but now he understood. If he wanted to fulfill his mission, he would have to be completely surrendered to the will of God. The walk to Egypt continued, but Moses would never forget that night. Meanwhile, Aaron, guided by God, came out to meet him in the desert. When the two brothers saw each other after so long, they embraced. Moses told him everything the Lord had said and the signs he was to perform. When they arrived in Egypt, they gathered the elders of the children of Israel. Aaron spoke the words Moses had heard from God, and Moses performed the signs before the people. Then, for the first time in many years, the children of Israel bowed down and worshipped. God had heard their cry. The deliverer was on the way. The brothers approached Pharaoh's palace, crossing the immense corridors lined with gold and hieroglyphs. Guards watched them with suspicion, spears ready at the slightest sign of threat. But Moses and Aaron weren't there for war. They were there to deliver a message, one that didn't come from them, but from God Himself. Before the throne, Pharaoh looked at them with a cold, unyielding stare. Moses took a deep breath, feeling the weight of that moment. Then, with a firm voice, he proclaimed, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go, so that they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness." Silence spread through the hall. Pharaoh's advisors exchanged suspicious glances. A murmur grew among those present, but was quickly cut off by the king's laughter, a laugh full of contempt. "Who is the Lord, that I should obey Him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." Aaron stepped forward. "The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Now let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God, or He may strike us with plagues or with the sword." Pharaoh's face hardened. His patience was gone. "Why are you taking the people away from their labor? Get back to your work." The king rose from his throne, eyes flashing with irritation. "Look, the people of the land are now numerous, and you are stopping them from working." That same day, Pharaoh gathered his slave drivers and gave a cruel order. "You are no longer to supply the people with straw for making bricks. Let them go and gather their own straw, but require them to make the same number of bricks as before. Don't reduce the quota. They are lazy. That is why they are crying out, 'Let us go and sacrifice to our God.'" The slave drivers rushed out. Pharaoh's order was clear. If the Hebrews wanted to talk about freedom, they would only know more oppression. The weight of the work increased. Now the slaves wandered the fields, searching for straw, pulling what they could from the dry, brittle soil. But the Egyptian whips never stopped. Cries of pain echoed through the captivity, while the Israelites were beaten for failing to meet the demands. Desperation took hold of the people. The Hebrew foremen, those responsible for organizing their brothers' work, were brought before Pharaoh and beaten. "Why are you doing this to your servants?" they cried between the blows. "Your servants are given no straw, yet we are told, 'Make bricks.' Your servants are being beaten, but the fault is with your own people." Pharaoh looked at them with disdain. "Lazy. That's what you are, lazy. That is why you keep saying, 'Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord.' Now get to work. You will not be given any straw, yet you must produce your full quota of bricks." The foremen left the palace, their backs still burning from the blows. But it wasn't only physical pain they carried. Their hearts were heavy. When they saw Moses and Aaron waiting for them, their eyes turned hard as stone. "May the Lord look on you and judge you," they said with bitterness. "You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us." Moses felt the impact of those words. The hope he carried seemed to waver. He stepped away, feeling the weight of the mission become unbearable. His eyes turned toward heaven. "Lord, why have you brought trouble on this people? Why did you ever send me? Ever since I went to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has brought trouble on this people, and you have not rescued your people at all." Silence hung in the air, but Moses knew God had heard, and soon the answer would come, an answer that would make all of Egypt tremble. Then the voice of the Lord echoed, firm and unchanging. Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. Because of my mighty hand, he will let them go. Because of my mighty hand, he will drive them out of his country. The words cut through Moses like lightning. God had not forgotten. God had not given up. The plan was in motion, and the power of the Almighty would be revealed in a way no one would ever forget. The Lord continued, I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as God Almighty. But by my name, the Lord, I did not make myself fully known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, where they resided as foreigners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the Israelites, whom the Egyptians are enslaving, and I have remembered my covenant. The voice of God resounded like thunder over the mountains of Midian. This wasn't just a distant promise. It was a certainty. Therefore, say to the Israelites, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. I will free you from being slaves to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with mighty acts of judgment. I will take you as my own people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. Every word was like a flame kindled in Moses' heart. God was about to act. He went down to the children of Israel and repeated the Lord's words, but the people's eyes were downcast, their hearts too heavy to believe. Suffering had hardened them. They could no longer see hope. Moses looked at them, feeling the pain of their unbelief. But before he could say anything, God spoke to him again. Go tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the Israelites go out of his country. Moses' heart sank. Lord, he said, if the Israelites will not listen to me, how then will Pharaoh listen to me? For I speak with faltering lips. But God did not back down. He had chosen Moses. He had chosen Aaron. And now the two brothers would be his voice before the greatest empire on earth. Dawn painted the Egyptian sky with golden tones as Moses and Aaron once again stood before the imposing palace of Pharaoh. The massive columns adorned with hieroglyphs and images of Egyptian gods seemed to watch them, as if the very land of the pharaohs mocked the boldness of these two men. But they were not alone. The Lord had sent them. The throne room opened before them, and Pharaoh looked down at them impassive. His gaze was cold, filled with contempt. Moses took a deep breath and stepped forward. This is what the Lord says, let my people go, so that they may worship me. Pharaoh crossed his arms, a mocking smile appearing on his face. And if I refuse, who can force me? Moses looked at Aaron and gave a slight nod. Without hesitation, Aaron threw his staff to the ground. Before the eyes of the Egyptians, the wood twisted and turned into a living snake. A murmur ran through the throne room. Pharaoh's advisors glanced at each other. Some stepped back. But Pharaoh did not move. With a disdainful gesture, he called his magicians and sorcerers, dressed in tunics adorned with mystical symbols. They also threw their staffs to the ground, and one by one, their rods turned into snakes. Moses' heart tightened, but then something happened. Aaron's snake moved with speed and power, swallowing one by one the snakes of the Egyptian magicians. Silence fell over the hall. Everyone held their breath. Pharaoh's gaze narrowed, but hardening his heart, he turned and walked away without saying a word. The warning had been given, but he refused to listen. The next morning, God gave a new command to Moses. Go to Pharaoh in the morning as he goes out to the river. Confront him on the bank of the Nile and take in your hand the staff that was changed into a snake. Say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews has sent me to say to you, let my people go, so that they may worship me in the wilderness. But until now you have not listened. Moses and Aaron went to the Nile, the river that was the very source of life for Egypt. Its waters were worshipped as a god. It was there that Pharaoh usually bathed, and it was there that he would hear the next word from the Lord. When the king approached the riverbank, Moses raised the staff and proclaimed, "This is what the Lord says. By this you will know that I am the Lord. With the staff that is in my hand, I will strike the water of the Nile, and it will be changed into blood." Before Pharaoh could act, Aaron raised the staff over the waters. In the next instant, a deep red began to spread through the river. The blue sparkle of the current was taken over by a dense red. The metallic smell of blood invaded the air. Fish floated to the surface, dead, as if an invisible army had passed through. The Egyptian priests ran to the riverbank in horror. But Pharaoh watched with a furrowed brow. Then he signaled to his magicians. They concentrated, muttered incantations, and with their occult arts, replicated the phenomenon in small portions of water. The king turned to Moses and Aaron with a challenging look. "Is that all?" Without waiting for an answer, he turned and entered the palace, not caring about the people running desperately in search of drinking water. The next morning, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh's palace again. The smell of blood still hung in the air. For 7 days, Egypt had suffered with the waters of the Nile turned to blood, but the king's heart remained hardened. Moses raised the staff and spoke with firmness. "This is what the Lord says. Let my people go so that they may worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I will send a plague of frogs on your whole country." Without waiting for a response, Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters. In the same instant, a strange noise began to echo through the swamps and canals of the Nile from the lagoons and reservoirs. Thousands of frogs emerged, countless numbers. They jumped into the streets, invaded homes, leaped onto beds, spread through kitchens and ovens. The entire land of Egypt was overtaken. Faced with the chaos, Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron. "Pray to the Lord to take the frogs away from me and my people, and I will let your people go to offer sacrifices to the Lord." Moses nodded. "Tell me when you want me to pray for you and your officials and your people, that the frogs may be taken away from you and your houses, so that they will remain only in the Nile." "Tomorrow," the king replied. Moses said, "It will be as you say, so that you may know there is no one like the Lord our God." The next morning the frogs died in heaps. They were piled up, and the stench spread across the land. But when Pharaoh saw that the problem had passed, he hardened his heart and went back on his word. Then the Lord gave a new order. Moses told Aaron, "Stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the ground, and throughout the land of Egypt the dust will become gnats." Aaron obeyed, and suddenly the dust of the ground turned into swarms of gnats. They covered men and animals, infiltrating their skin and beards, causing unbearable itching. The magicians of Egypt tried to reproduce the sign, but could not. They looked at Pharaoh and said, "This is the finger of God." But the king's heart remained hardened. Without warning, God sent another plague. Clouds of flies filled the air, buzzing in every corner of Egypt. They invaded homes, covered the ground, entered the eyes and mouths of the Egyptians. But in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel lived, not a single fly was seen. Pharaoh, already exhausted, called Moses. "Go sacrifice to your God here in the land." Moses shook his head. "That would not be right. The sacrifices we offer the Lord our God would be detestable to the Egyptians. And if we offer sacrifices that are detestable in their eyes, will they not stone us? We must take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God as he commands us." The king hesitated. Then he answered, "I will let you go to offer sacrifices to the Lord your God in the wilderness, but you must not go very far. Now pray for me." Moses prayed to the Lord, and the flies left. The air became clean, and silence reigned again. But just as before, when Pharaoh saw that relief had come, he changed his mind. The sun was already high when Moses and Aaron headed once more to Pharaoh's palace. The smell of previous plagues still impregnated the air. The marks of God's judgment were everywhere, but the king's heart remained hardened. Before the throne, Moses proclaimed with firmness, "This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says. Let my people go so that they may worship me. For if you refuse to let them go and continue to hold them back, the hand of the Lord will bring a terrible plague on your livestock in the field, on your horses, donkeys, and camels, and on your cattle and sheep. There will be a very severe plague." The threat echoed through the hall, but Pharaoh did not move. The next morning, the plague spread. Egyptian livestock began to die in the fields. Horses weakened. Flocks fell sick. The barns that were once full of life were now silent. But in Goshen, where the children of Israel lived, no animal was touched. Messengers ran to Pharaoh, confirming what Moses had said. But even so, the king refused to yield. Then God ordered Moses and Aaron to take handfuls of soot from a furnace and toss it into the air in Pharaoh's presence. When they did, the dust spread through the air, and wherever it landed, festering boils broke out on people and animals. The Egyptians writhed in pain. Even Pharaoh's magicians, who had previously tried to replicate God's signs, could not stand before Moses because their own skin was covered with boils. But once again, the king's heart remained hardened. Then God sent an even more severe warning. Moses went before the throne again and declared, "This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says. Let my people go, so that they may worship me. Or this time I will send the full force of my plagues against you, and against your officials and your people, so you may know that there is no one like me in all the earth. By now I could have stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with a plague that would have wiped you off the earth. But I have raised you up for this very purpose, that I might show you my power, and that my name might be proclaimed in all the earth." Pharaoh remained unmoved, but a shadow passed over his gaze. Moses took another step forward and proclaimed, "Therefore, at this time tomorrow, I will send the worst hailstorm that has ever fallen on Egypt, from the day it was founded till now. Give an order now to bring your livestock and everything you have in the field to a place of shelter, because the hail will fall on every person and animal that has not been brought in and is still out in the field, and they will die." The warning was given. Those who feared the word of the Lord should bring their servants and animals inside their houses. But those who paid no attention to the warning left them exposed. The next day the skies closed. The wind changed. Then came the roar. Lightning cut the sky, and a rain of hail fell with fury. Ice mixed with fire devastated the fields, split trees in half, destroyed the crops. Never before had Egypt seen anything like it. Only in Goshen, where the children of Israel were, did the storm not touch. Pharaoh, terrified, hurriedly called Moses and Aaron. "This time I have sinned," he confessed. "The Lord is in the right, and I and my people are in the wrong. Pray to the Lord, for we have had enough thunder and hail. I will let you go. You don't have to stay any longer." Moses left the palace and stretched out his hands to heaven. The thunder stopped. The hail ceased. Rain no longer poured down. As soon as Pharaoh saw this, he sinned again. He would not let Israel go. The war between God and the king of Egypt was reaching its peak. With each refusal from Pharaoh, the hand of the Lord became even heavier. But he would not yield. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart, and the hearts of his officials, so that I may perform these signs of mine among them, that you may tell your children and grandchildren how I dealt harshly with the Egyptians, and how I performed my signs among them, and that you may know that I am the Lord." Moses and Aaron entered the palace once more. The king sat on his throne with dark eyes, as if nothing could bend him. Moses spoke without hesitation. "This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says. How long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, so that they may worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I will bring locusts into your country tomorrow. They will cover the face of the ground, so that it cannot be seen. They will devour what little you have left after the hail, including every tree that is growing in your fields. They will fill your houses and those of all your officials. And all the Egyptians, something neither your parents nor your ancestors have ever seen, from the day they settled in this land till now." Saying this, he turned and left. For the first time, Pharaoh's advisors began to waver. They looked at the king and whispered, "How long will this man be a snare to us? Let the people go, so that they may worship the Lord their God. Do you not yet realize that Egypt is ruined?" Pharaoh clenched his fists. His face was tense. Finally, he called Moses and Aaron back. "Go worship the Lord your God. But tell me, who will be going?" Moses answered with firmness, "We will go with our young and old, with our sons and daughters, and with our flocks and herds, because we are to celebrate a festival to the Lord." Pharaoh's eyes flashed with anger. "The Lord be with you if I let you go, and your women and children. Clearly you are bent on evil. No, have only the men go and worship the Lord, since that's what you've been asking for." Then, with a wave of his hand, he ordered them driven from his presence. Then God said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over Egypt, so that locusts swarm over the land and devour everything growing in the fields, everything left by the hail." Moses raised the staff, and a hot wind began to blow from the east. It blew all day and all night. When morning came, the sky was dark. Millions of locusts covered Egypt like a living cloud. They devoured everything. The last green leaves disappeared. What remained of the crops was consumed in moments. Nothing was left, not a tree, not a green branch. Desperation took hold of the palace. For the first time, Pharaoh moved with haste. "I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you," he said. "Now forgive my sin once more, and pray to the Lord your God to take this deadly plague away from me." Moses went out and prayed. Then the Lord set a strong wind from the west that carried the locusts into the Red Sea, where they were thrown into the waters. But as soon as the danger passed, Pharaoh hardened his heart again. Without warning, God ordered Moses, "Stretch out your hand toward the sky, so that darkness spreads over Egypt, darkness that can be felt." Moses raised his hand, and immediately a dense darkness covered all of Egypt. The sun disappeared for 3 days. Absolute night reigned. The people could not see a hand in front of their faces. No one left their house. But in Goshen, where the children of Israel lived, there was light. Pharaoh, broken by the darkness, then called Moses again. "Go, worship the Lord. Even your women and children may go with you. Only leave your flocks and herds behind." But Moses answered, "You must allow us to have sacrifices and burnt offerings to present to the Lord our God. Our livestock too must go with us. Not a hoof is to be left behind. We have to use some of them in worshiping the Lord our God. And until we get there, we will not know what we are to use to worship the Lord." Pharaoh's teeth clenched, taken by blind rage. "Get out of my sight. Make sure you do not appear before me again. The day you see my face, you will die." Moses, without fear, looked directly into the king's eyes. "Just as you say," he replied. "I will never appear before you again." Then he turned and left. But Pharaoh did not know that the worst plague was still to come, and when it arrived, there would be no turning back. Moses, however, knew the end was near. God had spoken to him, and now he walked through the palace for the last time. The Lord had told him that he would bring one final blow upon Egypt, a blow that would finally make the king yield. When he stood before Pharaoh, Moses did not hesitate. His voice echoed through the great hall, loaded with authority. "This is what the Lord says. About midnight I will go throughout Egypt. Every firstborn son in Egypt will die, from the firstborn son of Pharaoh who sits on the throne, to the firstborn son of the female slave who is at her handmill, and all the firstborn of the cattle as well. There will be loud wailing throughout Egypt, worse than there has ever been or ever will be again." Silence in the room was sharp. The weight of those words fell on everyone present like a sharp blade. But then Moses continued, "But among the Israelites, not a dog will bark at any person or animal. Then you will know that the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. All these officials of yours will come to me, bowing down before me and saying, 'Go you and all the people who follow you. After that I will leave.'" Moses turned to leave, but before taking the last step, he cast one final look at Pharaoh. The king clenched his fists, his eyes filled with fury. But his silence revealed something more. He felt that this plague would not be like the others. The Lord had told Moses that Pharaoh's heart would still be hardened so that God's power would be known throughout the earth. Egypt was about to witness the darkest night in its history. The final plague was coming, and when it came, there would be no more resistance. Deliverance was near. But before that, Egypt would know the true weight of the Lord's justice. Moses gathered the elders of Israel and spoke with them. "Go at once and select the animals for your families and slaughter the Passover lamb. Take a bunch of hyssop, dip it into the blood in the basin, and put some of the blood on the top and on both sides of the doorframe. None of you shall go out of the door of your house until morning. When the Lord goes through the land to strike down the Egyptians, he will see the blood on the top and sides of the doorframe, and will pass over that doorway, and he will not permit the destroyer to enter your houses and strike you down." Each family hurried to prepare the lamb. The smell of roasting meat spread through the alleys of Goshen, while anxious hands spread the blood over the doors. Night advanced. In the palace, Pharaoh slept without knowing that his reign was about to be stained with mourning. At midnight, the silence was broken. A presence moved through Egypt, invisible but irresistible. From one house came a cry, then another. In moments, the clamor spread throughout the land. Mothers wept over their dead sons. The whole of Egypt was in mourning, from the palace to the prisons. No home was spared. Even Pharaoh's firstborn lay lifeless. Pharaoh rose from his bed, his heart gripped by a terror he had never felt. He sent for Moses and Aaron, and his voice, once so proud, now trembled.
"Up.
Leave my people, you and the Israelites. Go worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds as you have said, and go. And also bless me." All of Egypt wanted Israel to leave. The people ran to the houses of the Hebrews, bringing gold and silver. They wanted them to leave quickly. That same night, the children of Israel departed, men, women, children, more than 600,000, men on foot besides women and children. They left in haste. There was no time for the dough to rise, but it didn't matter. Slavery was over. The promise made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was beginning to be fulfilled. That night the Passover was born, and that day would be remembered by all generations. The Lord had delivered his people. The dawn still hung over Egypt when the children of Israel set out. The streets were silent. Egyptian homes were plunged in mourning. The people walked in the middle of darkness, but their hearts burned with one certainty: they were free. Moses went ahead, leading the multitude. The Lord had spoken to him again, ordering that all the firstborn of Israel, both of people and animals, be consecrated to God. What had been spared that night should now be set apart in honor of the Lord. Each step took them farther from the land of slavery. They carried their children, led their flocks, took with them the spoils of the Egyptians. But they did not walk alone. Moses carried with him the bones of Joseph. The patriarch had died centuries earlier, but before departing, he had made his brothers swear that one day, when God delivered them, they would take his remains to the promised land. Now that promise was being fulfilled. The Lord was guiding them, but he did not take them on the shortest road that passed through the land of the Philistines. He knew that if they faced war so soon, they might give up and return to Egypt. Instead, he led them through the desert toward the Red Sea. Then something extraordinary happened. As evening fell, a column of cloud appeared in the skies, majestic and imposing. It hovered over the people during the day. The cloud advanced before them along the way. But when night fell, something even more impressive happened. The cloud turned into a pillar of fire, illuminating the desert, giving them light and security. No matter the darkness, no matter the unknown, God was with them. With every step, the children of Israel moved farther from Egypt and closer to the promise. The Lord was leading his people, and the journey to the promised land had only just begun. The Lord spoke to Moses, "Tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. Pharaoh will think the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert." The Hebrews pitched their tents by the Red Sea, but on the other side, in the heart of Egypt, Pharaoh was restless. The lament of his people still echoed through the streets, but something inside him burned with fury. "What have we done? We have let the Israelites go and have lost their services." He looked at his officials. They were our servants, who will do our work now. Without hesitation, he ordered his army to be assembled. 600 of the best chariots were prepared with their drivers and warriors. Pharaoh, mounted in his royal chariot, led his troops determined to bring the Hebrews back or destroy them in the desert. The thunder of horses and the noise of wheels cutting through the sand echoed across the desert. The Egyptian army advanced rapidly, and the ground trembled under the weight of the pursuit. In the Hebrew camp, the first to see the dust on the horizon let out a cry of alarm. Fear spread like fire among the people. They looked back and saw Pharaoh's army approaching. Desperation took hold. They were trapped. Ahead, the Red Sea stretched like an impossible wall to cross. Behind death came fast, in chariots and war horses. The children of Israel cried out to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." But Moses stood firm. His gaze did not waver. He raised his hand and proclaimed, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then God spoke to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water, so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground." Night was falling when the pillar of cloud that went before the people moved and went behind them. It came between the Hebrews and the Egyptians. For the children of Israel, the cloud became light, illuminating the way. For the Egyptians, it became darkness, preventing them from advancing. Moses raised the staff over the waters. A strong and impetuous wind blew from the east all night. The waters began to move and divide. The sea that had been an impassable barrier now opened, forming two immense walls of water with a dry path in the middle. The people watched the scene in amazement. Then, one by one, they began to cross. Children, elders, men, and women all marched between the walls of water, guided by the light of the Lord. When the last Israelite stepped onto dry land, the pillar of cloud rose, and the Egyptians could see again. Pharaoh did not hesitate. With a cry of command, he ordered his army to enter the open path in the sea. The chariots advanced at full speed. But suddenly, something happened. The horses began to stumble. The wheels of the chariots came loose. The advance turned into chaos. Fear spread among the Egyptian soldiers. "Let's get away from the Israelites," they shouted. "The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." But it was already too late. On the other side, Moses raised the staff again, and the Lord said, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." The waters began to move. The roar of the sea echoed across the desert. The liquid walls collapsed over the Egyptian army. Chariots, horses, and soldiers were swallowed by the fury of the waters. The sun rose over a new day. The Hebrews looked back and saw the bodies of the Egyptians floating on the shore. None of them had survived. Then a song rose among the people, a praise to the God who had delivered them with a mighty hand and outstretched arm. Egypt was behind them. Slavery was only a memory. Israel was finally free. Miriam, Moses' sister, led the women in dances and tambourines, celebrating the victory. Slavery had been left behind, and the journey to the promised land was beginning. But the joy didn't last long. 3 days of walking through the desert brought them to a place called Marah. The sun burned their skin. Their feet were exhausted, and thirst pressed hard. When they finally found water, relief turned to frustration. The water was bitter, impossible to drink. The people grumbled against Moses. "What are we to drink?" they asked in despair. Moses cried out to the Lord. God showed him a piece of wood. When he threw it into the waters, something surprising happened. The bitter water became sweet. There God made a covenant with Israel. He said to them, "If you listen carefully to the Lord your God and do what is right in His eyes, if you pay attention to His commands and keep all His decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you." Soon after they arrived at Elim, an oasis in the middle of the desert, with 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. There they camped. There they rested. But the journey was only beginning. The desert would still test Israel's faith. The people of Israel left Elim and advanced through the desert of Sin. Between Elim and Sinai, only a month had passed since they left Egypt, but hunger began to weigh on them. The multitude grumbled against Moses and Aaron. "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." Moses heard, but God already had the answer. "I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the 6th day they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days." At dawn, a thin layer like frost covered the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they asked, "What is it?" Moses answered, "It is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. Each one is to gather as much as they need. Do not keep any of it until morning." Some tried to store it, but at dawn what they had kept was full of worms. Only on the 6th day could they gather double, because on the Sabbath none would fall. And so God sustained His people in the desert. In the evening, quail came and covered the camp, and the people had meat to eat. Moses ordered them to Keep some of the manna in a jar as a testimony for future generations, because that food would sustain them throughout the entire journey through the desert. Thus, the children of Israel continued their journey, fed directly from heaven, learning that their survival did not depend on Egypt, but on God. The people of Israel continued their journey through the desert and arrived at Rephidim, but soon they realized there was no water. The heat was intense, and thirst began to press. The multitude grumbled against Moses. "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?" Moses cried out to the Lord, "What am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." Then God answered, "Go out in front of the people. Take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink." Moses obeyed. With a firm blow he struck the rock, and water gushed out in abundance. The people quenched their thirst. But that place was called Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled, and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" While they were at Rephidim, the Amalekites came and attacked Israel. Moses ordered Joshua to choose some men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Meanwhile, he himself went up to the top of the hill with Aaron and Hur. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning, but whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side, one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. After the victory, God told Moses to write this on a scroll as something to be remembered and make sure that Joshua heard it, because he would completely blot out the name of Amalek from under heaven. Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." He said, because hands were lifted up against the throne of a Lord, the Lord will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to generation. The journey continued, and Israel was learning that provision and victory came from above. While Israel camped in the desert, Jethro, Moses' father-in-law and priest of Midian, heard of everything God had done to deliver his people from Egypt. So he decided to go meet Moses, taking with him Zipporah, Moses' wife, and their two sons, Gershom and Eleazar. When Jethro arrived at the camp, Moses went out to meet him. They embraced, exchanged greetings, and went into the tent. Moses told him in detail everything the Lord had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, about all the hardships they had met along the way, and how the Lord had saved them. Jethro was amazed. "Praise be to the Lord," he said, "who rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians and of Pharaoh, and who rescued the people from the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all other gods, for he did this to those who had treated Israel arrogantly." Jethro offered a burnt offering and other sacrifices to God, and Aaron came with all these elders of Israel to eat a meal with Moses' father-in-law in the presence of God. The next day Jethro saw Moses judging the people from morning till evening. Hundreds of people were bringing problems and disputes for Moses to settle. He was listening to each case alone, one by one. Jethro saw the weight of that responsibility and said, "What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them his decrees and instructions, and show them the way they are to live and how they are to behave. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter, because they will share it with you. If you do this, and God so commands, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied. Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. He chose capable men from all Israel and made them leaders of the people, officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They served as judges for the people at all times. The difficult cases they brought to Moses, but the simple ones they decided themselves. Then Moses sent his father-in-law on his way, and Jethro returned to his own country. Israel continued its journey, now more organized, and Moses was ready to lead the people with greater wisdom. The desert still held challenges, but God continued ahead of Israel. 3 months after coming out of Egypt, the children of Israel arrived in the desert of Sinai. The camp was set up in front of the great mountain where God would meet them in a way never seen before. Moses went up the mountain, and there God spoke to him. This is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob, and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession, although the whole earth is mine. You will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Moses went down and gathered the elders of the people. When they heard the words of the Lord, they answered together, "Everything the Lord has said, we will do." Then God gave an order to Moses. Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Have them wash their clothes and be ready by the 3rd day, because on that day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. Put limits for the people around the mountain and tell them, be careful that you do not approach the mountain or touch the foot of it. Whoever touches the mountain is to be put to death. The people purified themselves and waited. On the 3rd day at dawn, thunder tore the skies, lightning illuminated the mountain, and a thick cloud covered its top. The sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder. The people trembled with fear. Moses led the children of Israel to the foot of the mountain. They saw the mountain smoking like a furnace, because the Lord had descended on it in fire. The whole mountain trembled violently. From the middle of the clouds and fire, the voice of the Lord echoed across the desert. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Then God proclaimed the 10 Commandments, his covenant with Israel. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. The voice of God made the earth tremble. The people, gripped by terror, stepped back and said to Moses, Speak to us yourself, and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us, or we will die. Moses answered, Do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you, to keep you from sinning. Even so, the people remained at a distance, while Moses approached the dense cloud where God was. Then the Lord gave more instructions. He ordered that Israel not make gods of gold or silver, and said that wherever his name was invoked, he would come and bless them. The covenant between God and Israel was sealed. Now the people knew what the Lord expected of them. But that was only the first part. God still had much more to reveal. After proclaiming the 10 Commandments, God continued speaking with Moses, establishing laws to govern the people of Israel. These laws would teach Israel to live in justice, protecting the weakest and ensuring order in the nation God was forming. God began by establishing rules about Hebrew servants. If a Hebrew became a servant, he should work for 6 years. But in the 7th year, he was to be set free without having to pay anything. If he came in single, he was to go out single. If he had a wife when he came, she was to go with him. But if he loved his master and his family and wanted to stay, he could do so, having his ear pierced as a sign of his choice. There were also laws about violence. Whoever killed another person intentionally was to be put to death. But if the homicide occurred without intent, there would be a place where the guilty could flee and be protected. Whoever struck his father or mother, or even cursed them, was to be punished with death. The same happened to whoever kidnapped someone to sell them. If 2 men fought and one injured the other, the one who injured should pay the injured person's expenses until he recovered. If a master injured a servant and caused permanent damage, the servant was to be set free as compensation. There were laws about responsibility with animals. If an ox killed a person, it was to be stoned, and its owner would not be guilty unless he knew the animal was dangerous and had not restrained it. In that case, he could also be condemned. God also regulated cases of compensation. If someone opened a pit and an animal fell into it, he should pay the owner of the animal and keep the dead animal. If an ox killed another person's ox, both should divide the value of the dead ox or sell it and share the money. These laws showed that God wanted a just people, where no one harmed another without consequence. Israel was learning that serving the Lord was not only about sacrifices and worship, but also about living correctly. The covenant was being established, and God would continue instructing his people on how to walk with him. God continued establishing laws so that Israel would be a just and upright people. He ordered that they not spread false reports or join with the wicked to give false testimony. They should not follow the crowd in doing wrong or pervert justice to favor the rich or the poor. If someone found a lost ox or donkey of their enemy, they should return it. If they saw someone's animal fallen under its load, they should help it, even if it was an enemy. The people should avoid unjust judgments. They could not accept bribes, because that blinds even the wise and corrupts just decisions. They should not oppress the foreigner, because they themselves had been foreigners in Egypt. Regarding the land, God established an order. For 6 years they should plant and harvest, but in the 7th year the land should rest, and what grew by itself should be left for the poor and the wild animals. The Sabbath continued to be sacred. 6 days they should work, but on the 7th they should rest, so that even servants and foreigners would have rest. Israel should also be faithful in worship. 3 festivals were to be celebrated every year. The Festival of Unleavened Bread, the Festival of Harvest, and the Festival of Ingathering. All the men should appear before the Lord at these times. God warned that they should not offer the blood of sacrifices with anything containing yeast, nor keep the fat of the sacrifice until morning. They should also bring the first fruits of the land to the Lord, and not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. Then God made a promise to Israel. He would send an angel ahead of them to guard them on the way and bring them to the promised land. But they should obey that angel because God's name was in him. If they were faithful, the Lord would fight for them and drive out the enemy peoples, the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, and others. But God warned Israel they should not make a covenant with these peoples or worship their gods. All idolatry should be destroyed. If they obeyed, God would bless their land, remove sickness, give long life, and make their enemies flee before them. The conquest of the land would happen gradually, so that the people themselves would grow and be able to inhabit it. God promised that He would establish Israel's borders from the Red Sea to the Euphrates River. But He warned, "Do not make a covenant with them or with their gods. Do not let them live in your land, or they will cause you to sin against me, because the worship of their gods will certainly be a snare to you." The covenant was clear. God would guide Israel and give the promised land. But the people needed to remain faithful and not contaminate themselves with the customs of the pagan nations. Moses came down and told the people all the words and laws of the Lord. The people answered with one voice, "Everything the Lord has said, we will do." Then Moses wrote down everything the Lord had said. He got up early the next morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain and set up 12 stone pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he sent young Israelite men, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed young bulls as fellowship offerings to the Lord. Moses took half of the blood and put it in bowls, and the other half he splashed against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it to the people. They responded, "We will do everything the Lord has said. We will obey." Moses then took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, "This is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words." After that, Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up and saw the God of Israel. Under his feet was something like a pavement made of lapis lazuli, as bright blue as the sky. But God did not raise his hand against these leaders of the Israelites. They saw God, and they ate and drank. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and stay here, and I will give you the tablets of stone with the law and commandments I have written for their instruction." Moses set out with his assistant Joshua and went up the mountain of God. He said to the elders, "Wait here for us until we come back to you. Aaron and Hur are with you, and anyone involved in a dispute can go to them." When Moses went up the mountain, the cloud covered it. The glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai. For 6 days the cloud covered the mountain, and on the 7th day the Lord called to Moses from within the cloud. To the Israelites, the glory of the Lord looked like a consuming fire on top of the mountain. Then Moses entered the cloud as he went up on the mountain, and he stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. The Lord was about to reveal something great. On the top of the mountain, God would give him the tablets of the law and detailed instructions for the construction of the tabernacle. Israel had sealed a covenant with God, but the great test of the people was still to come. On the top of Mount Sinai, enveloped by the glory of the Lord, Moses received a new revelation. God ordered that a sanctuary be built where he would dwell in the midst of the people. "Tell the Israelites to bring me an offering. You are to receive the offering for me from everyone whose heart prompts them to give. These are the offerings you are to receive from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and fine linen, goat hair, ram skins dyed red, and another type of durable leather, acacia wood, olive oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil and for the fragrant incense, and onyx stones and other gems to be mounted on the ephod and breastpiece." Then God revealed the plan for the construction of the tabernacle, sacred place where he would manifest himself. Everything was to be made exactly according to the model he would show to Moses. The most sacred piece would be the Ark of the Covenant. Inside the Ark would be placed the tablets of the law that he would give to Moses. God was giving Israel a visible sign of his presence. The tabernacle would be the place where he would dwell in the midst of the people, where the covenant between God and Israel would become visible and real. It was a sacred space, separated from the rest of the camp, showing that God is holy and that his People should approach him with reverence. Inside the tabernacle, there would be an even more special place, the most holy place, where the Ark of the Covenant would be the sign of the covenant between God and Israel. The tabernacle would also be the center of worship, where the priests would offer sacrifices and intercede for the people. Everything in it pointed to the importance of obedience, worship of God, and the need for spiritual purity to draw near to him. God was teaching Israel that his presence would accompany them in every step of the journey. The tabernacle was not just a tent, but the sign that the Lord walked with his people. God gave Moses detailed instructions about the sacred garments that should be worn by Aaron and his sons, who would serve as priests before the Lord. These clothes were not just ornaments, but symbols of the authority, holiness, and responsibility the priests would have in interceding for the people. Aaron and his sons, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, were chosen to exercise the priesthood. They would represent the people before God, offering sacrifices and taking care of the service in the tabernacle. God ordered that special garments be made for Aaron for glory and beauty. Aaron's sons would wear white tunics, sashes, and turbans, symbolizing purity and dedication to the Lord. These garments were not just a uniform, but a visual representation of the sacred calling of the priests. They could not enter God's presence in any way they pleased, but should be prepared and dressed according to the divine order. Through the priesthood, God taught that to approach him, it was necessary to have holiness and intercession. The high priest carried the names of the people upon himself, reminding everyone that he represented the entire nation before God. God ordered that every Israelite, when counted in the census, give an offering as a ransom for his life. This offering was half a shekel of silver and served for the maintenance of the tabernacle. No rich person would give more, and no poor person would give less. This offering taught that the entire nation depended on the Lord's redemption. A bronze basin was to be placed between the altar and the entrance to the tabernacle. There, Aaron and his sons should wash their hands and feet before ministering. They shall wash their hands and feet so that they will not die. This is to be a lasting ordinance for Aaron and his descendants for the generations to come. The washing showed that no one could approach God without purification. God ordered the making of a sacred anointing oil made with olive oil and precious spices, myrrh, cinnamon, calamus, and cassia. This oil would be used exclusively to anoint the tabernacle, the sacred utensils, and the priests. Do not pour it on anyone else's body, and do not make any other oil with the same formula. It is sacred, and you are to consider it sacred. Whoever makes perfume like it or uses it on someone other than a priest must be cut off from their people. A special incense was also to be made with chosen ingredients. This incense would be burned only in the tabernacle as an offering to the Lord. Do not make any incense with this formula for yourselves. Consider it holy to the Lord. Whoever makes incense like this to enjoy its fragrance must be cut off from their people. Each of these elements taught Israel that service to God required holiness, purity, and reverence. The incense represented continuous prayer. The anointing showed separation for divine service. The basin taught the need for purity, and the ransom reminded that every life belonged to the Lord. God was preparing Israel to be a holy people, living in his presence and worshiping him in the right way. While Moses was still on Mount Sinai, God revealed to him who would be responsible for building the tabernacle and all its sacred utensils. The Lord said, "See, I have chosen Bezalel, son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom, with understanding, with knowledge, and with all kinds of skills to make artistic designs for work in gold, silver, and bronze, to cut and set stones, to work in wood, and to engage in all kinds of crafts. Moreover, I have appointed Oholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, to help him. Also, I have given ability to all the skilled workers to make everything I have commanded you. This choice showed that service to the Lord required skill, dedication, and divine empowerment. The tabernacle could not be built in any way but according to the model God had revealed to Moses. After giving the instructions for the construction of the tabernacle, God reaffirmed the importance of the Sabbath for Israel. You must observe my Sabbaths. This will be a sign between me and you for the generations to come, so you may know that I am the Lord who makes you holy. Observe the Sabbath because it is holy to you. Anyone who desecrates it is to be put to death. Those who do any work on that day must be cut off from their people. For 6 days work is to be done, but the seventh day is a day of Sabbath rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day is to be put to death. The Israelites are to observe the Sabbath, celebrating it for the generations to come as a lasting covenant. It will be a sign between me and the Israelites forever. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Finally, God gave Moses the 2 tablets of the covenant law, the tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God. While this was happening on the mountain, down in the camp, Israel did not know how long Moses would still be on the mountain. The people began to grow restless, and a great mistake was about to happen. The revelation of the law and the construction of the tabernacle had been completed, but Israel still needed to learn to wait and trust in the Lord. Days passed, and Moses did not return. Uncertainty grew, and soon fear took hold of the camp. Then the people went to Aaron and said, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." Aaron, instead of rebuking them, gave in to the pressure. He told them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord." So the next day, the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterward, they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. On the mountain, God interrupted Moses and said, "Go down, because your people, whom you brought up out of Egypt, have become corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them, and have made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it, and have said, 'These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt.'" The Lord's anger burned against them, and he said to Moses, "I have seen these people, and they are a stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone, so that my anger may burn against them, and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation." But Moses interceded, "Lord, why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say, 'It was with evil intent that he brought them out, to kill them in the mountains, and to wipe them off the face of the earth'? Turn from your fierce anger. Relent, and do not bring disaster on your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you swore by your own self. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give your descendants all this land I promised them, and it will be their inheritance forever." Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. Moses turned and went down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands. They were inscribed on both sides, front and back. The tablets were the work of God. The writing was the writing of God, engraved on the tablets. When Moses approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, his anger burned, and he threw the tablets out of his hands, breaking them to pieces at the foot of the mountain. And he took the calf the people had made and burned it in the fire. Then he ground it to powder, scattered it on the water, and made the Israelites drink it. He said to Aaron, "What did these people do to you, that you led them into such great sin?"
Do not be angry, my lord.
Aaron answered, "You know how prone these people are to evil. They said to me, 'Make us gods who will go before us.' As for this fellow Moses, who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." So I told them, "Whoever has any gold jewelry, take it off." Then they gave me the gold, and I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. Moses saw that the people were running wild, and that Aaron had let them get out of control, and so become a laughingstock to their enemies. So he stood at the entrance to the camp and said, "Whoever is for the Lord, come to me." And all the Levites rallied to him. Then he said to them, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Each man strap a sword to his side, go back and forth through the camp, from one end to the other, each killing his brother and friend and neighbor." The Levites did as Moses commanded, and that day about 3,000 of the people died. The next day Moses said to the people, "You have committed a great sin, but now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin." So Moses went back to the Lord and said, "Oh, what a great sin these people have committed. They have made themselves gods of gold. But now please forgive their sin. But if not, then blot me out of the book you have written." The Lord replied to Moses, "Whoever has sinned against me, I will blot out of my book. Now go, lead the people to the place I spoke of, and my angel will go before you. However, when the time comes for me to punish, I will punish them for their sin." And the Lord struck the people with a plague because of what they did with the calf Aaron had made. Israel had broken its covenant with God in a terrible way. But because of Moses' intercession, God did not destroy them. However, consequences would come. The people would still have to face the discipline of the Lord. After the grave sin of the golden calf, God said to Moses, "Leave this place, you and the people you brought up out of Egypt, and go up to the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, 'I will give it to your descendants.' I will send an angel before you and drive out the Canaanites, Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Go up to the land flowing with milk and honey. But I will not go with you, because you are a stiff-necked people, and I might destroy you on the way." These words fell like a blow upon Israel. God would fulfill his promise, but he would no longer walk in their midst. The people mourned deeply and took off their ornaments as a sign of mourning. Moses then pitched a tent outside the camp and called it the Tent of Meeting. Whenever he entered it to speak with the Lord, the pillar of cloud would come down and stay at the entrance, while the Lord spoke with Moses. Whenever the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance to the tent, they all stood and worshipped, each at the entrance to their tent. The Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. Then Moses would return to the camp, but his young aide Joshua, son of Nun, did not leave the tent. Moses would not accept going forward without God's presence, so he pleaded, "You have been telling me, 'Lead these people,' but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. You have said, 'I know you by name, and you have found favor with me.' If you are pleased with me, teach me your ways, so I may know you and continue to find favor with you. Remember that this nation is your people." The Lord replied, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." Then Moses said to him, "If your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here. How will anyone know that you are pleased with me and with your people unless you go with us?" What else will distinguish me and your people from all the other people on the face of the earth?" And the Lord said to Moses, "I will do the very thing you have asked, because I am pleased with you, and I know you by name." Then Moses said, "Now show me your glory." And the Lord said, "I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion." But he said, "You cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live." Then the Lord said, "There is a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft in the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will remove my hand, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen." The Lord not only decided to continue with Israel, but granted Moses a glimpse of his glory. The covenant was restored, and God would go forward with his people. After interceding for the people, Moses received a new order from God. "Chisel out 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and I will write on them the words that were on the first tablets which you broke. Be ready in the morning, and then come up on Mount Sinai. Present yourself to me there on top of the mountain. No one is to come with you or be seen anywhere on the mountain. Not even the flocks and herds may graze in front of the mountain." Moses obeyed. He chiseled out 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and went up Mount Sinai early in the morning, as the Lord had commanded him. He carried the 2 stone tablets in his hands. Then the Lord came down in the cloud and stood there with him, and proclaimed his name, the Lord. And he passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation. Moses bowed down to the ground at once and worshipped. "Lord," he said, "if I have found favor in your eyes, then let the Lord go with us. Although this is a stiff-necked people, forgive our wickedness and our sin, and take us as your inheritance." Then the Lord said, "I am making a covenant with you before all your people. I will do wonders never before done in any nation in all the world. The people you live among will see how awesome is the work that I, the Lord, will do for you. Obey what I command you today. I will drive out before you the Amorites, Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land where you are going, or they will be a snare among you. Break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, and cut down their Asherah poles. Do not worship any other god, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God." God renewed his promises and warned Israel, "Do not make a treaty with the people of the land, for they will prostitute themselves to their gods and sacrifice to them, and they will invite you, and you will eat their sacrifices. And when you choose some of their daughters as wives for your sons, and those daughters prostitute themselves to their gods, they will lead your sons to do the same. Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land, for when they prostitute themselves to their gods and sacrifice to them, they will invite you, and you will eat their sacrifices. And when you choose some of their daughters as wives for your sons, and those daughters prostitute themselves to their gods, they will lead your sons to do the same." God also renewed the command about the festivals and the firstborn, and warned against idolatry. Moses remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights without eating bread or drinking water, while God wrote the words of the covenant on the new tablets. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands, he was not aware that his face was radiant, because he had spoken with the Lord. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, his face was radiant, and they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called to them. So Aaron and all the leaders of the community came back to him, and he spoke to them. Afterward, all the Israelites came near him, and he gave them all the commands the Lord had given him on Mount Sinai. When Moses finished speaking to them, he put a veil over his face. But whenever he entered the Lord's presence to speak with him, he removed the veil until he came out. And when he came out and told the Israelites what he had been commanded, they saw that his face was radiant. Then Moses would put the veil back over his face until he went in to speak with the Lord. The covenant was renewed. God had forgiven Israel and reaffirmed his presence in the midst of the people. Now the journey toward the promised land continued. But Israel knew they walked under the glory of the Lord. Moses ordered the people to bring voluntary offerings for the construction of the tabernacle and its utensils. The offerings included gold, silver, bronze, fine fabrics, skins, acacia wood, olive oil for the lampstand, spices for the incense, and precious stones. Everyone who is willing is to bring to the Lord an offering of gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and fine linen, goat hair, ram skins dyed red, and hides of sea cows, acacia wood, olive oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil, and for the fragrant incense, and onyx stones and other gems, to be mounted on the ephod and breastpiece. The Israelites responded with their wealth and skills. Men and women came with willing hearts, offering jewelry, fabrics, and resources. Skilled women wove linen and wool, and the craftsmen prepared wood and precious metals. Israel responded with generosity. The offerings were so many that later the artisans had to ask the people to stop bringing materials. The heart of Israel was willing to build a place for God to dwell. With the materials gathered, Bezalel and the artisans began assembling the sanctuary. Everything was done exactly as God had commanded Moses on Mount Sinai. With the structure of the tabernacle complete, Bezalel began making the sacred utensils as God had ordered Moses. Each piece was made with excellence, showing that everything in the tabernacle should reflect the holiness and glory of the Lord. The Ark of the Covenant was made of acacia wood and overlaid with pure gold inside and out. It had rings and poles for carrying. Inside would be placed the tablets of the law. The table for the bread of the presence was made of acacia wood and overlaid with pure gold. The table had moldings and poles for transport. On it would be placed the 12 loaves of the bread of the presence, representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Bezalel carved a lampstand of pure gold with 6 side branches and a central trunk forming 7 lamps. It was decorated with cups shaped like almond blossoms, symbolizing life and the light of God that would continually illuminate the tabernacle. The altar of incense was made of acacia wood and overlaid with gold. The altar of incense was used to burn the sacred incense before the Lord, representing the prayers of the people rising as a pleasing aroma to God. The artisans also prepared the sacred anointing oil and the special incense according to the instructions God had given. They would be used exclusively in the tabernacle and in the priestly service. Everything was done exactly as God had commanded. Moses inspected the work, and seeing that the people had obeyed in every detail, he blessed them. With everything ready, God ordered Moses to set up the tabernacle on the first day of the first month of the second year after coming out of Egypt. This would be the day when God's dwelling place in the midst of Israel would be officially established. As soon as Moses finished the work, something extraordinary happened. The cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. The presence of God was so intense that not even Moses could enter the tent. The cloud rested on the tabernacle by day, and at night there was fire on it, visible to all the people of Israel. From that moment on, whenever the cloud lifted, Israel knew it was time to set out on their journey. When the cloud remained over the tabernacle, the people camped and waited, because the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel, during all their travels. Now God dwelt in the midst of his people, and would guide them toward the promised land. The book of Exodus ends with this powerful image: a God who rescued his people, made a covenant with them, and now walked with them every single day. If you've made it this far, know that you are a winner. Many start, but few reach the end. You persevered. You were built up. And now you carry this message inside you. Now I want to know who really made it here. Comment below. I went all the way to the end of the story, and I was strengthened. That way, everyone will know you were one of those who didn't give up and stayed until the end of this powerful biblical journey. If this message strengthened you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with more people and help the Word of God reach even more lives. God bless you, my friend. The same God who delivered Israel is still delivering people today, and He can deliver you too.